Welcome back, everyone. So as discussed in the last video, we want to talk about another portion of this particular part of the diagram. So the portion I want to talk about is the communication layer between the browser client and the DNS. So what is the DNS? Well, here you can see DNS is actually an abbreviation of a domain name system. So what is domain name? Well, when you think about the URL that you access, particularly in our example, facebook.com, what you are trying to access is a unique name that is actually something that is human readable, meaning that facebook.com means something to you, but to the computer, it doesn't really mean anything. What facebook.com actually maps to is something known as an IP address. And an IP address is something that the computer recognizes as a unique address somewhere on the web. So the reason why this happens is because if you think about addresses, they're all unique. The address of your home, the address of your office, the address of your parents' home, these are all ideally unique addresses that are not replicated. Because for mail to be sent to these addresses, they must be unique so that people don't receive the wrong mail. Similarly, when you're making a browser request for a website, it's very similar. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, DNS, I have this website I want to access. Can you tell me what the unique address of that is? So when you say, hey, where does facebook.com go? The DNS will actually say, oh, this actually maps to a IP address of this particular 31.1.13.71.6 that I'm pointing to. Now, the interesting thing is that many different companies that own websites, especially big ones like Facebook, they actually have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of IP addresses. And the reason for this is because there are numerous potential servers in the world that can house all the different files to help build out Facebook. And we'll talk about that more later, but just understand that a website doesn't necessarily need one specific IP address. They, in fact, most likely own many IP addresses, but each of these addresses are unique. But here's the thing about the DNS and Facebook having hundreds of thousands or millions of different IP addresses that all pretty much aim to do one thing, which is give the end user the appropriate files to access facebook.com. You as a user, you don't care about what the actual IP address is. All you know is that when you send over facebook.com, you get back the appropriate IP address that will allow you to access facebook.com servers. In this particular case, the DNS is the one that actually helps figure out, hey, you're giving me facebook.com. I'm going to figure out what specific IP address you need in order to actually get what you want, which is access to the Facebook server so you can get the Facebook files. Now here, what you're looking at is actually a specific format of this IP address. I've mentioned before that it's pretty much in this format of these numbers with these dots in between. Now this is the IPv4. So it's pretty much the version 4 of the Internet Protocol, which is what IP stands for. This one pretty much has 4.29 times 10 to the 9 amount of bits. Now, why this is important? When the World Wide Web was first created, they didn't really know how many different unique domains or IP addresses they would need to store, because at the first time, no one knew what the internet was going to be. But over time, as we know now, there are so many different websites, and all of them have unique IP addresses. And in fact, they might even have multiple, as we've come to discuss already. What had to happen is that we needed to create a new protocol, which is IPv6. This one looks much more complicated. It can fit way more characters. And because it can fit way more characters, it really significantly increases the amount of capacity or a number of these different combinations that can exist. So here, 3.4 times 10 to the power of 38, significantly larger. And this particular case here, IPv4 and IPv6, the DNS actually has to maintain both of them. Now, do you need to do anything with the DNS in your system design? No, but it's good enough for you to know what is actually happening with the actual domain name system. But this is pretty much it. The DNS, again, once again, you pass it a human readable, unique address, facebook.com, and the DNS will give you back the appropriate IP address. Now, you might be wondering, if there's IPv4 and IPv6, how do we know which version to get back? Well, this is where in the request itself, it's often going to actually have the specific format that it wants back. Now, this might be the browser or this might be the actual request sender itself. In this particular case, say, hey, give me the IPv4 version of facebook.com, then we'll get back the list in the IPv4 version. If we say, hey, give me the IPv6 version, then the DNS will give you back the corresponding IPv6, whichever one is inside, and it figures out based on your location and all these different factors which one you actually need to receive. Again, the DNS is the thing that helps handle all of that for you. So with this understood, we can now understand these two pieces, the DNS and the browser client, in this diagram. Now, what I want you to see here is that you can kind of start to draw a line between the browser client, the DNS, and then the CDN, which we'll learn later. For now, it's not as important, but you can draw a line on this left-hand side from this right-hand side. And the reason why is because on this right-hand side is where we're going to start talking about the actual application owner's system. So here we're talking about system design. In this particular case, we're going to discuss in the context of Facebook system. Now, again, we're still learning at a high level what all of these things represent in all systems, but it's easier with an example in order to nail down our understanding. So here again, we're using Facebook as the example. And this line that I'm drawing is so that we can know that we're going to start venturing into understanding the system on the side of the application that we're building or we're consuming, which is facebook.com. So now that we understand this, in the next video, let's start talking about load balancers and web servers. I'll see you in the next video.